You should look up this classified government project called Project Bazaar. That's actually what it's called, Project Bazaar. Isn't that a bizarre name for it, right? I think, and this is the most requested video request that I've ever had. It's just like countless thousands of people saying, you need to make a video about 5G technology and the dangers. Most people think 5G is one thing, and 5G is not one thing. And if you came here looking for like a tinfoil hat nonsense, then you definitely came to the wrong place. Former ham radio operator, actually grew up building antennas. I would actually solder together and using copper wire build my own Yagi antennas, and was always really interested in field theory. At an extremely young age, I've written a book on field theory, which is incredibly popular. I'm always studying field theory. I talk about electromagnetic radiation. Of course, most people don't even realize that light and radio wave and gamma are all the exact same thing. Everything is, of course, a differentiation between frequency and wavelength. It's like, what's the distinction between radio and visible light and gamma radiation, like that's squirting outside of the Chernobyl nuclear reactor? And the only distinction is capacitance. By capacitance, of course, I mean wavelength. Let's actually go over, a short synopsis of 5G technology, because a lot of people think, well, it's 5G, it's one thing, it's 5G, it's dangerous. No, 5G is actually primarily three separate entities. I'm not actually against conspiracies, even though I'm not a conspiracy person at all. And by default, Occam's razor states that, logically so, some conspiracies must be true. I'll actually talk about those at the end of this video regarding 5G. Let's just start off by stating some facts about 5G and get those out of the way, then we can actually talk about some of the inherent, really nasty dangers of 5G. 5G was developed by NASA, which of course is a government organization, in combination with a very cryptic company. It's called Machine-to-Machine Intelligence, which is M2MI, and one specific guy, which I won't mention, for 5G communication technology. There's three bands, or three major sectors of 5G. There's low band, mid band, and then high band 5G. The serious issue, or basically 85% of the worrisome issue, is high band 5G. Low band 5G operates in the sub 1 gigahertz range, and like back in the day, even though we weren't supposed to, I'd actually have radios that you could tune in to 800 megahertz, just sub 1 gigahertz, and listen to cellular telephone conversations. This is the oldest cellular and TV frequencies, and like a lot of European companies want to develop mid-band 5G. The reason for that is it's a lot faster and cheaper, infinitely cheaper to implement. And this is in the 1 to 10 gigahertz range, and this of course covers a lot of current cellular, which depending on the cellular is up in 2 and 2.5 and 3 and 5 gigahertz, and also 2 Wi-Fi frequencies. High band of 5G is troublesome for countless reasons, and it actually has these amazing attributes that make it very, they make wireless communications people want to drool, like in the sexy sort of way, because Ericsson, for example, just broke the 5G speed data transfer of 4.3 gigabits per second of download speed. Let me repeat that, basically 4.5 gigabits. That means you could download like an enormous 4K movie in like 8 seconds. I mean, like a really long, ultra high resolution, and that is absolutely amazing. There's for all the douchebags out there that want to, watch Netflix while they're waiting around in the in the airport for their flight to lift off. I'm getting to the good part, just hold on with me. And 5G is a serious issue. It's operating between 20 to 100 gigahertz. The serious issue is it's operating in the mid to mid-upper range on the far end of microwave frequency. It's not ionizing technically, but there's some really serious issues, and it's also a brilliant Trojan horse for nefarious reasons I'll get to here very briefly. The serious issue with high-band 5G is its implementation, since in this range, while the amount of data transfer per second is enormously high and there's incredibly high potential, the implementation is such that these frequencies are not very penetrative of brick and wall. Unfortunately, they're very penetrative of human tissue, and also, too, they interact with polar molecules. It's not my opinion. This is hardcore scientific fact, but I'll talk about that in a second. Basically means they're going to have to stick these little bastards all over the place, these high-band 5G, and that's a serious issue. Even though they're not putting out an enormous amount of power, like current cellular repeaters that you see everywhere, depending on their height and location, they're putting out between 20 to like 50, 40 watts of power, whereas like high band 5G is putting out 2 to 15 up to 20 watts. So at the very high end, it's putting out maximum power of low end of current cellular repeater technology. But they actually have to use a lot more of them, and this actually has some brilliant attributes for snoopy entities and people that want to do nefarious things. Like I said, I'm going to get that in a second. The G in 5G is just a generational thing. There's not like one thing that is 5G. It just means it's the 5th generation of wireless technology, bidirectional communication. But like I said, you got low band, mid band, and high band, and the Europeans and the Australians too, I believe, want to develop mid band because it's a lot faster and a lot cheaper. But the possibilities for 5G high band are incredibly high, and you could charge people out the nose for it and just put up these, especially in urban areas. You could put up 100 of these little suckers and charge people out the nose, and you could do some amazing stuff as far as downloading. There's a lot of other issues, but anyway, the 5G is not just one monolithic thing. People that are talking about all the tinfoil hat crap that's everywhere on the internet and YouTube, talking about 5G millimeter wave, which at high band 5G it is millimeter wave. It's microwave end spectrum issues. But I mean, all these people just talking about 5G like it's one thing. It's just complete and absolute BS. Now let's get into the serious issues and talk about harmonic sympathy. And like I said, if you ever want to do a Google search on this government classified, I think it's been part of it's been declassified, but heavily redacted. It's called Project Bizarre, which I know is a really weird name, but hey, the government's got all sorts of weird names for stuff. Let's just talk about a fact of high-band 5G that the government wants to implement, somewhere right around the range of 30 to 100 gigahertz, the majority of which is going to be around 30 to 80 gigahertz. I don't know if you know this fact. This is not my opinion. It's a hardcore fact that microwave radiation is a sponge. I'm trying to think of the best analogy so that you could grasp this. That the polar nature of the water molecule, polar molecules in the entirety, are extremely absorptive of microwave frequency radiation. By the way, yeah, the bipolar, like here we have oxygen molecule and 2 hydrogen. Over here we're talking about the actual bipolar water molecule. This is a fact, and there's countless tests done on mice. I said rice there for a minute. Mice and other animals. The water molecules in human tissue, brain tissue, all our tissues are extremely absorptive of, and it's not just heating. You actually going to have harmonic sympathy, and the serious issue where 5G, high-band 5G can be a serious issue is an upper sideband and lower sideband manipulation of human behavior. And we'll talk about that in a second. This is not tinfoil hat stuff. This is actual fact. And look this up if you don't believe me, as far as microwave radiation, affecting polar molecules to an extreme extent. There's plenty of research on this. You can even find stuff like that on Wikipedia, I believe. Um, Typically, people think about microwaves, they think about their microwave ovens, and there's heating involved, and people that worked with radar would notice that their ears would start popping and cracking, and this is actual heating of the interior tissues of the inner ear. And so what it was doing is that the gases inside the inner ear were expanding, and people that were working near these radar stations and near these magnetron devices, we're hearing stuff that wasn't actually in the atmosphere to be heard. They're just expanding gases inside. It's a serious issue, and I know that's a lot more power. But even with all these little 5G, high band transceiver units all over the frigging place, and high band 5G, which is not currently implemented, but they're working really hard to implement it, because of its amazing attributes. And people are like, oh my God, I could download a 4K movie, a big 4K movie in 10 seconds. I mean, that is what I want in my iPhone 20 or, my 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. But it is a brilliant, and people always talk about this, and people don't get this, is that when you read all the tinfoil hat garbage online, when people talk about weaponization of 5G or all frequencies, this is what the idiots don't get when they understand the attributes of certain frequencies. They say, well, any frequency can be weaponized. And this is true, not only for nefarious means, but also, too, for harmonic sympathy. Like my buddy, for example, he's a super brilliant millionaire. And he's consulted the best people that money can buy, and he invests in not passive security. Passive security is where like alarm sounds or the police is called. He invests in active security. He's got 3 giant vaults which are full of gold and cash. Of course, I'm not going to give you his name. I've seen it. But he employs active security. First it releases gas, and then the next one is a frequency that is known to if you're a mega millionaire guy that needs a serious security system, what they do is they install this ultrasonic system that has a specific set of known frequencies that have been tested over and over again, and they've used some of the best burglars that actually work with security agencies. They found that you cannot, even if you put on earphones, the frequencies are such that they'll start to make you vomit and feel nauseous. Getting back to the point on 5G, whereas any and all frequencies can be weaponized, the serious issue is the harmonic sympathy issues with this specific range of high-band 5G radiation between roughly 20 gigahertz upwards of 80 to 100 gigahertz, most of which is going to be between 20 and like 60 and 80 gigahertz. While it's wonderful as far as download and upload speeds, the people that want to implement it are complaining about how many freaking transceiver towers they have to stick. Basically, one street could have like 5 or 6 of them, and they'd just be all over the damn place. And everybody's going to love their internet. But the serious issues is that the magnitude by which, where in which, and within which the high-band 5G can be weaponized is infinitely higher than current all-frequency bandwidth implementation in communications. So while all the idiots out there are talking about, well, you could weaponize anything, these are the anti-5G people. They're like, well, you're just talking about 5G being weaponized. You could weaponize anything. This is true. But that's like saying, a firearm is dangerous. All these weapons are dangerous. Like, yeah, but a nuclear bomb is a lot more dangerous than, small arms, right? Analogously. That's what kind of blew my mind on these anti-5G people talking about frequency weaponization. That was my ultimate point in speaking about that. Heating is not going to be the issue at these sort of outputs at 2 to 10 watts of power on transceiver stations of high-band 5G. It's not an issue. I wanted to make that important point. Obviously, that's the case. I mean, I knew that they were low power output. And of course, they modulate their power, specifically also, too, on your end-use device. Like most cell phones are putting out 500 milliwatts or less. Depends on the actual SNR. They communicate with the transceiver, and they'll put out more or less power to accommodate. If you're in close proximity, you don't need to put out that much power. But if you have one of these suckers within, 100 yards of your house, and they're basically going to be every damn where, it's a serious issue. It means outside of lining your walls with a Faraday cage, i.e. copper mesh, you're not going to get away from this. And it is a brilliant, if I could think of I could not even imagine a more evil, diabolical, perfect Trojan horse wherein which and by which you could actually implement urban pacification by using these microwave frequencies, even at their low power output, for harmonic sympathy to actually pacify people, actually meaning zombify them. You could use upper sideband, lower sideband without, and I'll actually talk about that here in a second. Also, too, the implementation of mid-band 5G, the Europeans are looking at this so they could actually proliferate these transceivers everywhere, because you could use the exact same transceiver arrays with very little manipulation for a high-band upgrade. When Europe and Australia and other people that are implementing mid-band 5G, that they could actually upgrade their systems without much cost expenditure or time for high-band 5G. A perfect Trojan horse I could not even think of than using upper and lower sideband harmonics for harmonic sympathy of brain tissue. When you're actually talking about microwave frequencies, and this is a fact, look this up if you don't believe me. This is not like tinfoil hat crap, as I just got done telling you 20 minutes ago. The microwave absorption by polar molecules, and the most famous polar molecule is the molecule that makes up all life, is astronomically high. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. 1 gigahertz or less, or 10 to 20 gigahertz, it's not an issue. Of course, you have people getting brain tumors. Of course, you know it, and I know it by having cell phones up to like doctors and lawyers. The guys that are constantly on the phones, like, wow, they end up with brain tumors right here underneath their head. That's very, very close proximity. But the penetrative nature of this microwave and frequency radiation, specifically from, not only from transceivers, but also too from their phones, even with the exact same, say, 200 milliwatts of output, conventional 3G or 4G phone, like your current iPhone or your current Android, is way worse and way more dangerous, and also, too, a far, far better tool for human manipulation and pacification. That sounds superficially like tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff, but it has that possibility because of the characteristics and attributes of millimeter wavelength frequency high band 5G transmissions. That's not my opinion, that's a fact. And that is not good. That's actually the scary part. Most 2G and 4G doesn't penetrate the skull. All 5G, for example, no matter what the mill output, does penetrate the skull. It's just like a drill drilling into your head. 5G is a gold mine for human pacification possibilities. It is literally a perfect Trojan horse. There was a really important point in all my notes here. I wanted to make a long list of notes, but some of these are a bit too complex to talk about because people just start crossing their eyes and getting confused. I hope you're not too confused about upper sideband or lower sideband. Yeah, the one thing I wanted to mention, without a spectrum, an expensive spectrum analyzer, you would have no way when you're talking on your phone or using your application on your phone with 5G high-band transceiver antenna and communication chip technology, you would have no way other than a super expensive spectrum analyzer to realize that you'd actually be getting upper sideband, lower sideband. It would be brilliant as an evil, and all governments are evil. If you wanted to pacify people with a full implementation of future 5G, high-band 5G, the only thing you'd have to do is just actually send out a signal through an application or throughout the entire phone network, and you would have no idea that was going on. And you could literally zombify people or bring them into a state of like a drunken stupor. This is not conspiracy or tinfoil hat crap. This is something that has been tested and proven, literally proven since 1967 by the U.S. Department of Defense. U.S. DOD proved this in 1967. How much better if you think they've perfected it now some 60 years later, for God's sakes? Yeah, there's a lot of tinfoil hat garbage about 5G on YouTube and the internet, but I'm not going to entertain that because I'm not into tinfoil hat garbage. But let me tell you another fact, and this is undeniable by anybody if you have a half a brain. The ultimate big brother, and this has nothing to do with politics, we say big brother. The ultimate big brother goal is always twofold, was actually more than twofold. But the primary two are tracking and control. Everybody on Earth now basically has a cell phone. It is the most brilliant, ingenious tracking device ever created. Simply by using cellular networks, they could triangulate your position in a heartbeat, send anybody else out to get. It is literally, I mean this seriously, it's not my opinion, it's a fact, it's the most brilliant tracking device ever. You couldn't do better than that than if every human being born, when they were born, they bent them over and stuck a permanent radio transceiver device up their shaft, to pinpoint wherever someone is, any time of the day, anywhere, period. That is what a cell phone currently is. You could use that same cell phone in an upgraded technology with 5G. Not only is it a perfect tracking device, but also, too, using a harmonic sympathy as a brilliant control device. You could zombify somebody. You could bring them into a state of stupor. That's as good as it gets. I mean, the only way you could, you can't get people to stick a tracking device up their bum, right? You can't. So what you do is you make it, it's like the way you give a dog its medicine. You wrap it in some candy or some beef jerky or whatever, and you feed it to your dumb dog, right? Here you go. Dog's never going to take the medicine, but if you wrap it in some beef jerky, it'll take the medicine, right? Human beings are the same damn thing. You can't get a human being to take a tracking device up their pooper, so you could track them everywhere they go for the rest of their life. But you can with a cell phone, with all its little cool apps and the fact that it's a phone and it's a calculator. Every cell phone does like a million things, but it's also the most brilliant tracking device. What if, perchance, since this was proven and tested extensively by the Department of Defense in 1967 for microwave manipulation of human behavior. This is not tinfoil crap, it's fact. What if you could use that same tracking device, upgraded with high-band 5G technology, and not only track them everywhere the hell they go, but send out upper sideband or lower sideband 5G signal. They would never hear anything, they would never know anything, but you could pacify them. You could stupefy them. There are actually 4 distinct mood states that the Department of Defense found that through proper, it's called harmonic sympathy, look it up, you could pacify, it's pacification, stupefaction, not elation, drowsy, and there was one other. There was a 4th mood that they could induce with harmonic sympathy using microwave radiation. And I don't mean like, huge-ass magnetron, high-power microwave radiation. When you're talking about harmonic sympathy, no, we're talking about low power, but the correct frequency applied of that microwave radiation could pacify somebody. It's called harmonic sympathy, look it up. And the project that the government, I think part of it's been declassified, even though heavily redacted, is called Project Bazaar. There's 2 other projects that the Department of Defense did using microwave radiation through harmonic sympathy for human pacification. I say zombification, but it doesn't, 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. It's a distinction without a difference. That's actually the real danger of 5G. Everybody's going to love it because they're going to download 4K movies, big-ass 4K movie in 10 seconds. Wow, awesome. Yeah. But the 5G is bad. 5G is bad. At the high band 5G, that's a serious issue. Up in the mid-range microwave radiation frequencies between 20 to 80 gigahertz average, that's going to be a problem. I didn't put any tinfoil hat, wackadoodle nonsense in there. There's so much crazy. And 5G is not one thing. It just refers to a generation, that's what the G stands for, the 5th generation technology for cellular communications. But the sadistic evil, as it were, within that is the nature of those microwave frequencies in high-band 5G. What you could do with it is absolutely astounding. That's not my opinion. This was tested and proven by the Department of Defense in 1967. And last I recall, 1967 is around about, what was that? Yeah, 60 years ago? Now it's 2020. 1967 to 2020. They proved this in, I know I'm repeating myself, they proved this in 1967. So yeah, there are significant dangers with high bandwidth 5G. And the fact that they're going to be sticking these towers all over the freaking place, and the upgrade of your cellular, be it iPhone and or Samsung, both of them, of course, are going to get implemented with high-band 5G. It spells bad news. It's not good for your health, and it is a perfect government control device. It literally is, and that's not conspiracy. Its potential as a Trojan horse for control is astronomically high. And when I say astronomically high, that's actually not an exaggeration. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And this was a viewer-requested video, and there you go. Bye.